good morning. Welcome to Law Power Hour. Michael Keene. Welcome.
Thank you. Happy to be
It's
here.
actually Michael Keeney. I said Keene and I meant to say Keeney. Michael is a very interesting young lawyer. And the reason I say he's interesting is what he does is a really, really important public service for the state of Michigan. Michigan Legal Help Services, is that correct?
Yep, well, we're the Michigan Legal Help Program. That's right.
And tell our viewers who you are and what the program's all about, because those of you who are listening or may listen to the program later should know about this program. What's it all about?
So the Michigan Legal Help Program is a program designed to help people that need to represent themselves in court. So people that either can't afford an attorney or that don't qualify for legal services or do qualify for legal services, but their local office doesn't have the resources to help them. They can come to our website, which is michiganlegalhelp.org, and learn about different legal topics, as well as use our tools to create all of the forms that they need for their topics, and they can also get information about what to expect when they go to court. So it really is trying to make the court system more accessible for people living in Michigan or that have a legal problem in Michigan.
Is your program bilingual?
Yes, so our program has a mirror, our website has a mirror site that's ayudalegaldeMichigan.org, and all of the information is translated into Spanish, and we also have a few of those do-it-yourself tools available in Spanish as well.
So what we have here is a do-it-yourself kit that's free. You can go to the library if you don't have a computer at home, and you can Google up Michigan.
Legalhelp.org, that's right.
Hold on. Good morning. I thought we had a call this morning.
Okay.
That's okay, they'll come back. So if you go to michiganlegalhelp.org and you have a landlord-tenant problem,
Mhm.
and I'm going to start with the basic problem,
Right.
because many people have issues with their landlords and they don't know how to handle them.
Mm-hmm.
And this is a very serious problem in Michigan
Absolutely.
because there are a lot of landlords who do not properly maintain property,
Mm-hmm.
and those individuals do not know what their rights are when the property isn't maintained.
Mm-hmm.
For example, I was contacted yesterday by a lady who tripped and fell in her driveway, and she's a Section 8 tenant.
Okay.
So she has special housing,
Mm-hmm.
which she's entitled to have because she's low income.
Mm-hmm.
The landlord was required to repair the driveway. He didn't repair the driveway. She tripped and fell. She wanted to sue the landlord. I told her she couldn't sue the landlord because it was open and obvious to her, and she was precluded from suing him for pain and suffering. However, I told her she did not have to pay her rent. She could pay her rent into the court in escrow and has to give notice to the landlord
Mm-hmm.
of the reason she's not paying her rent. Now, would your website contain that information as to what she should do about her rent?
Absolutely. So our website would actually give her a few options. The first would be to, as you mentioned, to contact the landlord first, and then try to get whatever repairs she needs done, taken care of. If that doesn't work, then our website goes over a couple of options. Either put rent in escrow, or actually pay to have the work done, keep those receipts, and then deduct that from the rent. And so it goes over both of those processes on our website too. So it gives people options, and they're able to choose whatever they feel most comfortable doing.
Under those circumstances, and it's very important for you listeners to understand this, whether you tune in later or you're listening now, because I know I don't get any calls for the first half an hour. here's the most important point. If you follow the procedure and give the landlord notice, you must give the landlord written notice of what you're doing. Written notice means that you keep a copy and you give a copy to the landlord, that you can withhold the payment of rent without being evicted. You will not be evicted. If the landlord then does not make the repairs, I will repeat this for you. If the landlord does not make the repairs, the landlord may be obligated to pay you damages as a result of his or her failure to maintain the property. It's very important to understand because it has to do with a term called habitability. If the house is not habitable, you don't have to live in substandard, inhabitable housing. It applies to everybody. You don't have to have a lot of money for this to work. You just have to have an idea on how to handle it. And this is what Michael and his group do. And it's a service. It's the most important service that you can get. Next to calling a lawyer who's willing to give you some of his time or her time. And as you know, if you call my office, we'll answer your question. But Michael, are you only limited to the website, or do you have a physical number that people can reach you at?
So we are only limited to the website. And one of the things that's great about our website, though, is that we offer a live chat function between 11 and 3 weekdays. So if your viewers or if visitors to our website have a question, they can go ahead and write into us, and we can chat with them in live time and provide any answers to questions they have regarding information we have on the website or other information that we can help them find.
Live chatting means you can use your cell phone and text on your cell phone,
Right.
as well as a computer.
That's
Because
right.
a cell phone is a handheld computer when you use the texting service. So you can text in, ask questions, get responses, and direction on what you should do.
That's absolutely right.
Now, do your folks ever go to court?
So the content development attorneys, the staff attorneys with our programs typically don't go to court at all. I'm an outlier in that sense because I like going to court to get more practical experience. So when I write on the website, it's a little more practical. I can talk about what people might expect because I experienced it in court as well. But no, typically the attorneys don't go to court. All we do is research and writing.
Well, here's my bigger question. Do you have forms on this site?
Absolutely.
Okay, this is real important because lawyers know where to find forms. We can go to SCOA through the state, or if we belong to one of the other services, or through the state bar for lawyers, we can get forms. Citizens can get forms from the Michigan Supreme Court, but they still don't know how to fill those forms out,
Exactly.
and they need someone to explain that. But on your website, you have forms and you explain them, correct?
Absolutely. So some of the do-it-yourself tools that we have, not some of them, all of them actually go through and first of all screen the user to make sure that they're eligible for whatever court process they're trying to get involved in. And then it actually goes through and asks further questions, and it populates the forms to make sure that they're filled out correctly. So everything's basically taken care of if they use our tool.
How many visitors do you have to your site on a weekly basis?
So in the month of June, we averaged 32,000 viewers a week. So we are quite popular. The people that know about us, and they keep coming back. And the people that don't, we're hoping to get the word out so that way we can help more people in Michigan.
32,000 viewers per week?
Right. So that means 32,000 people at least go to our website a week.
And they look for information.
Some of them, and that's the issue too, because some of them are looking for information. Some of these people might not be in Michigan, and that that means that we can't help them. But for the people that are, we definitely help them. But those
Now-
are our numbers.
Normally, I would take a break, but this is such an interesting topic. When you said 32,000 people a week,
Right.
I mean, that's a whole city.
Hmm.
Good morning.
Good morning. Happy Saturday to both of you. My question is, does bus service assist people who are being overcharged with the water, storm, or runoff?
Okay, well, let's try that question again. Now, break it down. Does what?
Okay. In the city of Detroit, it appears that the water department is charging us as opposed to all of the people that they service throughout 2/3 of the state for water runoff. You've heard about the water that supposedly goes into the storm drain. Now we're in charge of additional.
Yes, the rain runoff. I understand what they're charging for. There's a big lawsuit pending over it.
Right. Okay, everybody, my knowledge, is not a part of that lawsuit. So I guess the question is, if it's a class action lawsuit, will it benefit everyone? Or do additional class action groups have to file?
No,
and do you assist with that information?
Sure. If the class action lawsuit's for the benefit of all the citizens. They're all going to benefit if it's successful, but unfortunately, and I'll say this, in most class actions, the ones who end up getting paid are the attorneys, because there's never enough money to go around to reimburse all the citizens. But the class action lawsuit, if they are successful prospectively, in other words, from the date that the judgment is entered, will have more value to all the citizens than it does on the back reimbursement side. But there will be a benefit for everyone.
Okay, now in this case, it's not just about reimbursement as it is for the water department to stop charging the residents.
Well, that's one of the results that's going to occur in this lawsuit. I can't tell you much more about the lawsuit, but I do know a couple of the attorneys who were working on it, and I understand what the issue is. So they'll stop charging for the discharge and runoff.
Okay.
Okay?
So, will you have one of the attorneys on with you?
Well, sure. That's a good point, and I'll call one of them and talk to them about it the first of the week and see if I can get them on the air.
Thank you so much.
Okay. Have a good day.
You too.
Okay, now I'm going to put you in high gear here.
Okay.
And this is a real important question. Many people have small claims.
Hmm.
And when they have small claims, they don't understand the term jurisdictional limitation.
Hmm.
Now, you're a lawyer, you understand that term. And I explain it to people in very simple terms. There's a ceiling on how much an individual can sue for in the small claims division.
Hmm.
It's $5,000. Correct?
It just jumped up this year to $6,000.
Okay, so it's
$6,000.
correcting his elders again, but it's okay. It's not a problem. Okay, 5 or 6, it doesn't matter.
There's a ceiling.
There's a
the point.
ceiling.
Right.
The point I want to make is that if I go in to the small claims division and I sue you and you hire a lawyer, that automatically removes the case from the small claims division, correct?
Absolutely.
So do you have small claims forms?
Yes, we do.
And do you explain, this is very important now, do you explain how to fill those forms out? Because people do not understand how to fill a form out. And the most heinous things happen. For example, I take my car into the garage to get the engine overhauled.
Hmm.
It's a $2,500 bill. and my car's there for 4 months. So I've got to use all kinds of other means of transportation for 4 months.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe rent a car if I can afford it. Use one of these Lyft services if I can afford it.
Mm-hmm.
Mass transportation if I can find it. Or rely on other people. And my charges could run substantially more if I'm promised to get my car back in 2 months or a month. So the question is, what does your website explain? I'm not going to ask you for every word,
Okay.
but I'm going to ask you for a general understanding for our listeners of what your website contains with respect to small claims.
So, I guess a good way of starting off would be somebody would look at the articles that we have on small claims. So they would learn about the limitations that you talked about in terms of the maximum amount that can be sought to collect. So for damages, so they can't be above $6,000. And it'll also mention the fact that you can't have an attorney represent you in small claims court. And then if somebody's still interested in pursuing a small claims case, they can click on the do-it-yourself tool. It'll screen them to make sure that their case is one that is going to be a small claims case. It'll ask questions about the amount. It'll ask questions about everything, who they're looking to sue, and if they are in fact able to go through the small claims process. Again, it'll complete the form for them as long as they answer all of the questions, and then it'll give them step-by-step instructions as to what to do with their completed forms.
In small claims court, is there equal access to justice if a person's indigent?
So if you're there are fee waivers available, and I'm wondering if that's what you're asking about.
There you go.
Yeah. So
Explain that to our listeners. That's why I brought it up the way I did.
fantastic.
Because the United States Constitution requires that there be equal access to justice for individuals who do not have the funds.
Mm-hmm.
This is a fact, and don't forget this fact because it's
Mhm.
an important fact. If you don't have the money to pay the filing fee and you want to get to court, there are ways around it. Now, does your site explain that?
Yes, absolutely. And so we actually have another tool that completes the very simple fee waiver form that you would file along with your other forms, asking the court to waive the filing fee.
I want you to explain how the fee waiver process works. I'm not going to let you alone on that.
Okay, so the current fee waiver form that's produced by the State Court Administrative Office is pretty straightforward. It first asks the people if they receive any sort of public benefits, public assistance, and if they do, then it further asks information about their income levels as well. And based on that, somebody within the court's office will look at it's essentially like an application, will look over the application and decide whether the person that filed it is in fact entitled to it. Now, there are some instances where a judge might say you're not entitled to this fee waiver, and you might in fact be, but that's a little more complex. But that's essentially how it works, is you fill out a simple form and you file it with the court, and then the judge will determine whether you do actually need to pay the fee or not.
So, just in real world terms, if you're below the poverty level in the state of Michigan,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm not saying this in a disparaging way, I'm saying it factually. If you're getting $900 a month in Social Security, and you're getting food stamps, and you're getting Section 8 housing, and you need to go to court, more likely than not, your fees are going to be waived if you're filing a lawsuit.
Mm-hmm.
That's what's going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
But this does not apply in criminal cases.
Mm-hmm.
It only applies in civil cases,
Mm-hmm.
landlord-tenant cases,
Exactly.
where we're trying to help you protect your own rights. So those are the differences. It even applies in the bankruptcy court if you can't afford to pay your bankruptcy fees. Because under the federal law, there has to be equal access to justice. So you get the opportunity to get to court, but you still have to do the paperwork. Now, your site doesn't cover bankruptcy, does it?
We don't have any information on that right now.
Good. Even I try to avoid that because it's pretty complex and leave that to the bankruptcy lawyers.
Right.
Why don't you tell us about the areas that you covered, and then we're going to take a break for a minute.
Okay. So our website covers 12 very broad categories of law. So they include things like family law, where you'll find information about divorce and custody, parenting time. Then we have some information about protection from abuse, personal safety stuff, where you can find information about PPOs. We also talk about housing, as you mentioned.
Slow down on that PPO. What's a PPO?
Oh, a personal protection order. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, our listeners have to understand.
Right.
If you're being abused by somebody, you can go down and get a PPO.
Mm-hmm.
But you just can't say it's verbal. It's got to be a little more than verbal. It's got to be damaging you.
Right. And there are, in fact, different PPOs that are available. So if your situation doesn't fall in the typical like domestic violence situation, it might be more of a stalking situation. We have information about that as well. You mentioned housing. We do some money and debt stuff, which is consumer law, which is small claims. We have some information about immigration and farm worker. Some end-of-life planning where people can learn about small estates and the formal probate processes.
Do you cover power of attorney? Do you have a power of attorney form on
We're
there?
currently working on that. So that will be up and running hopefully by the end of the year.
And it'll have all the bells and whistles if you give another person your power of attorney, what it means to give a power of attorney.
Exactly.
And a medical power of attorney?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, right. So those informations on power of attorneys are currently in the development phase right now.
Good.
Right. And then we also cover some employment issues and some education issues, education specifically being special education rules, or if your child's facing punishment like expulsion or suspension, you can find out some more information.
Now, with respect to simple matters like transferring a title to a car, do you have that kind of information on your site?
So the only information we have in terms of transfer of title, I can think of in a couple of places. One of them might be our divorce area. The other one will probably be our small estates information too. If somebody were to write in during our live chat hours asking questions about transfer of title, it's very likely that one of our agents would go to the Secretary of State website and find the information there and the appropriate links and send it to that person.
Now, your agents are lawyers, aren't they?
Our agents are law students that are supervised by lawyers.
Okay.
So there's never a time where there will be just a law student online without one of our staff members looking over their shoulder, making sure that everything's going okay.
And where's your office located?
Our office is currently located in Ann Arbor. We're going to be moving to Ypsi, but as I mentioned, everything's done online. So if people have questions, if people want materials, they can contact us directly through the website.
Okay, we're going to take a break for a minute, Michael. We're going to come back. I want to talk to you about child custody, support, and divorce, because those are big topics, and there are people who can't afford to pay, but they don't know what to do.
Right, absolutely.
Okay, we'll be right back.
Are you in legal trouble? Are you in need of legal advice? Or just have general legal questions? Call 1-800-529-8721. That's 1-800-LAW-USA1. And watch Law Power Hour and get your questions answered by experienced attorneys who are experts in their field. That's Law Power Hour, hosted by Barry Keller, attorney at law. Saturdays at 10 a.m. here on WHPR Detroit Live.
I shouldn't have kept it a secret, but Law USA 1 is my telephone number. It's been my telephone number for 35 years.
Wow.
So if any of you out there have any legal issues, you need some help, we're in the service business. We're not in the marketing business. Give us a call. You understand the difference between the type of law firm we have. We serve people and we don't market on TV. So that's all I have to say about Keller and Avidenka. Now, let's get back to our topic today, which is really important. I'm separated from my husband.
Hmm.
I want to get a divorce. Can I go to your website and get the forms to fill out without going over to Kinko's and buying a divorce kit?
Yes. and in many
I mean, it made that real simple, didn't I?
right, yeah, and in many cases, it is best if you come to our website. And the reason being, as you mentioned earlier, the forms that we use are sponsored by the Supreme Court of Michigan, by the State Court Administrative Office. So that means that the forms that we have to be accepted by any judge in the state of Michigan. So the issue with sometimes buying those packet divorce forms is that they might not be state specific and they might not be accepted in court.
That's the reason I brought it up.
Right.
So if you're going to do your own divorce and you can't afford to pay a lawyer,
Mm-hmm.
or you think you're smarter than the lawyer and you're going to do your divorce, you can go to Michael's website.
Mm-hmm.
Give him the name of that site again,
It's MichiganLegalHelp.org.
and you can get the necessary information to file for divorce.
Right.
It also covers child custody,
Mm-hmm.
correct?
Correct.
And there are a number of factors in child custody. Do you cover all the factors?
We sure do.
Because it's a very sensitive area as to which parent should have legal custody and which parent should have physical custody.
Mm-hmm.
And most of the people who come in to see us do not understand that while you may have physical custody or legal custody, once you file for divorce, your children technically are wards of the state of Michigan, because the friend of the court has a great role in determining where your children should live and who should have physical custody and who shall have legal custody of the children. Can you explain that?
Right. So we definitely explain how the friend of the court and how the circuit court, their roles in determining custody, the 12 best interest factors of the child, what those are, how those come into play, and yeah.
Yeah, because these are important issues that everybody who's involved in a dispute, especially where children are involved, need to understand.
Mm-hmm.
Do you go through property settlement?
We do mention, we do go over things a little, slightly, and I do think we can go into some detail about it. We might go over what's considered marital property. Whenever it comes, and I think we also go into some stuff. I'm trying to remember, because the do-it-yourself tool that we have for our divorce is, it covers everything. So
Does it talk about pension and ERISA? Because it's very important. It's a big issue. You know, people who handle their own divorce, I had this poor lady come to me. She handled her own divorce.
mm-hmm.
And her husband was retired from Chrysler Corporation. And he received a pretty substantial pension. He was a salaried employee.
Mm-hmm.
And she didn't realize she was entitled to 50% of his pension. They were married for 32 years. He worked there for 30 years.
Mm-hmm.
So she had to have someone reconstruct everything, and it was a very slow process.
Mm-hmm.
There are no retroactive benefits. In other words, past due benefits, you're not entitled to those when you go in and ask for part of the pension. You're only entitled to prospective benefits, because the courts only go from the time you file your request for benefits. That's for child support as well. You can't get past benefits, it's prospectively. The only area where there are past benefits that can be paid is in paternity. Because in paternity, you have to pay the medical expenses or your fair share of the medical expenses and expenses for maintenance of the newborn child.
Mm.
Consequently, in the divorce area, this would be a good site for anyone to look at whether they were going to handle their own divorce or retain someone.
Right.
Would it be fair for me to say that everyone should go to your site and look at it for information?
Absolutely. And one of the things that we also do as well is if an area is too complex, if we think it's too difficult for people to handle themselves, we'll tell them that, and we'll also suggest that they talk to a lawyer. And at that point, they'll know that it might not be appropriate for them to try to do anything on their own.
Okay, so that occurs in the messaging process back and forth, correct?
Or even throughout our articles or common questions, or even within our tools, we actually tell people if they answer a question a certain way, it becomes too complex and they really need a lawyer to help. Just like the woman you spoke about, the one that had the husband whose pension she didn't know that she had access to or had a right to half of it. If there's an information that's so complex that a lawyer has to go in and reconstruct everything, we know that a person can't do that on their own.
Well, who came up with this idea? I know you explained it to me. Who was the architect of this program? Whose idea was it to develop this program for the citizens of the state of Michigan?
So the way the Michigan Legal Help Program came about is Justice Marilyn Kelly put together a task force in 2010 to address the high number of people that needed to represent themselves in court. And she was concerned about them having access to the courts. And so as a result of that, our program was created. And a couple years later, our website launched.
And how many attorneys are there on staff?
There are 3 staff attorneys. However, our director is an attorney, and our webmaster is also an attorney as well.
And how many law students participate with you?
So if you're asking about the live help agents, they typically range in numbers from something like 7 to 20 at a time. And so they're students, so there are lulls in whenever they come or whenever they're on vacation or whenever finals come around. And in that case, that's when the staff actually steps in and mans everything.
So the services are available, what, 24/7, or is there a daytime service? Tell me about the services.
Right. So the information is available 24 hours a day. If you want to chat with somebody, we're available to chat Monday through Friday from 11 to 3. If you still need information and it's outside of those times, you'll actually be prompted to send us an email, and somebody from our office, a staff member, will respond to your email within the next business day.
Now, if I have a criminal record and I want an expungement, is that information available on your site?
Absolutely. So we go over both.
Listen to this, the whole process of expungement's there, and it's in more than one language.
Right. It's in more than one language, and we also go over adult convictions and juvenile adjudications because sometimes people confuse those as well. And it goes through the whole process. It tells you the type of convictions that you are allowed to set aside. It talks about the limits for both of those 2 separate actions. And if you use our tool, it'll complete the forms and also give you the step-by-step instructions.
So when people call me on the phone, I'm going to direct them to Michigan Legal Help, and then they can call me if they have a question after they've looked at the site.
Right.
Because I can be online with them at the same time and answer their question.
Or if it's between 11 and 3, they can chat with one of our agents directly too.
But it's a wonderful, wonderful asset that's available all over the state for people to use. Now, can they download forms? This is really important question that I have. I go to your site. I need forms. Can can I download the forms from your site and copy them?
So if you use our tools, one of the things that we really emphasize is people should use our do-it-yourself tools because that ensures that the forms are coming out correctly. If you go through the process and if you answer all of them, at the very end, you'll be able to save your answers in case you need to make a small change, in case there's a typo somewhere. And then you can download those forms and save them, email them to yourself if you prefer them, or you could just print them off. So yes, you'll have the completed forms ready for you.
So let's say I want to go through a small claim. We're going to go back to small claim.
Okay.
I put my name in there, right? I get to the form. And then if I have a question about that, I can go back and do a little reading and come back. I've saved my form and I can go back to my form and complete my form, right?
Absolutely.
Okay. When I'm all done completing my form, I can either hit a button to print it on my computer and it'll print it. Except my computer is stubborn when it prints front and back at the same time. That's because I read it like a book, but you can't do that with the court.
Don't do that.
No,
Yeah.
I'm warning you about that for the court because you can only have one side printed for the
Right.
court. They do not like both sides. They won't read the other side.
They will not.
So you have to be careful about this.
Mhm.
Okay, so you print it. The whole process then can be complete when you're done. I've got everything for filing. It gives me instructions on how to file it.
Mhm.
If I need to file a petition to waive a fee, I can go to another section and waive the fee.
Mhm.
Now I'm giving you instructions just like you'd get in the cookbook.
Right.
Follow them.
Mhm.
So you do your forms, and if you feel you have to waive a fee, you can go to the waiver section and read up on that, and you'll see that there are forms there.
Right.
You complete the package, you can take it down to the court and file your small claim, correct?
Absolutely.
And you're better off filing a small claim in person than filing it by mail, because you'll get a receipt for it when you file it. If you file it by mail, you may not get a receipt for it unless you send a return receipt with it. So better off going down and filing it.
Mhm. And so within our instructions too, we mentioned just that if if you ever file anything, regardless of if it's small claims or if it's a family law case and you're filing by mail, we give specific instructions on how to do things in order for you to get a receipt that was filed.
Now, you switch it over to family law for a moment. So I file a divorce complaint. Can I mail my divorce complaint in? Start the process that way?
You definitely could.
But you have to send a copy to friend of the court when you do that, don't you? If you've got children.
That's right.
And you have to serve the other side.
Right. So you have to have the other side served. So whenever you're starting the process of divorce, you can't be the person to actually serve your spouse. It has to be somebody else. And so we go over those instructions in depth too, because even if it's going to be a friendly divorce, I don't know if there are such things, but even if you and your spouse aren't going to argue about anything, you still can't be the one to serve your spouse that initial summons and complaint. And we go over it in great detail.
Now, suppose I need a PPO, personal protection order.
Mhm.
Does it explain the process for getting a PPO?
Absolutely. And we also still have information about something a little more complex, ex parte PPOs, which means that you're in immediate danger and the judge should take action immediately without hearing the other side. So we really do cover all aspects of areas. It's not just like bits and pieces here and there.
Who in your organization, or whom, should I say, made the decision as to what topics you were going to cover?
So we are kind of a non-typical legal aid program, and so the topics that we cover are those that are most often covered by a typical legal services office. And just because those are often the people that need to represent themselves in court, it's not, yeah.
Do you have workers' compensation information?
We don't have workers' compensation information just yet, but what we do have is we do have unemployment benefits. It's completely different, I know. But we do have some information about employment issues in terms of unemployment and wage and hour. Like if you weren't paid for work that you did, you can come to our website, learn about your rights and learn about what you can do in order to try to get that money.
Oh, there was just a big wage and hour case settled where these three people were working at a gas station and they were working over 40 hours a week,
Mm-hmm.
and the employer was paying them $100 extra a week in cash.
Mm-hmm.
And they collected $62,000 through wage and hour. So if you work overtime, you're entitled to be paid for overtime.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're not being paid, there are two types of wage and hour claims you can make, depending on the size of the business.
Mm-hmm.
One is through the state of Michigan, and the other is through the federal government.
Mm-hmm.
There are certain exemptions. If it's a family-run business and it's 5 or less employees, it doesn't apply. However, in the great majority of situations, it does apply, unless you're in the service industry, and then it may not apply. Consequently, you can make a claim through wage and hour. What about automobile no fault? If you're involved in an accident, it's not your fault, and you want to get paid your first party benefits. Do you have forms for that?
We do not. So, in terms of specific cases like what we know as tort cases, like slip and fall cases, or cases of injury like assault or battery that are on the civil aspect of things, we don't cover any tort issues. So, what we would do in that case is we would refer people out to either information that's provided by the state or a local agency, or they would get a referral to a local bar association or the State Bar of Michigan so they can find a private attorney that can help them with that.
Okay. And do you get contacts regarding those issues?
We do occasionally, yeah. We've gotten questions about everything. And so whenever,
What's the majority of the areas where people concentrate in contacting you?
without a doubt, that is 100% family law. It's something like 70 or like 65 or something ridiculous, like or over half of all the visitors to our website have a family law issue. So divorce, custody, parenting time, those are the main issue that people have questions about.
Okay, what you said, without a doubt, the majority of the time spent on family law.
Mm-hmm.
People are actually asking you to give them an opinion as to how their case is going to turn out.
So, and that's
I'm serious about what I said. It's like somebody, well, what do you think is going to happen with my case if I go to court? Do they do that when they text you?
right, and that's something that's really important to remember is that on Michigan Legal Help, we only offer information and we don't offer advice or opinions. So we'll help people say, if you want a divorce and you have kids, you can follow this process. If you want to change a custody order, you can follow this process. But what we won't answer is how much spousal support you think I'm going to get, or anything like that. Just because it's not our case. We don't have clients, so it's inappropriate for us to actually make that. And we make it perfectly clear that there is no attorney-client relationship within any of our interactions. So you have every right to contact us, and so does the opposing party if they want to. And we have had that.
Well, can you refer them to the site where they can figure out the child support?
Well, so they can actually, exactly. They can use our tools to complete all the forms, and ultimately, we're not going to give an answer as to how much you're going to be awarded because it's out of our hands at that point.
What about the numbers of days? For example, if a family has joint custody, they alternate holidays, 365 days a year. Are all those factors going to be taken into consideration through your website to explain to people what happens?
Right. So that'll definitely be explained through our website. And whenever you're talking about custody, all of our stuff is the motions or proposed orders. ultimately it's a judge or the friend of the court that makes a decision. So that's why we can't answer those questions.
What I'm trying to say in simple terms out there for men and women both is that if you have your child the majority of the time, there's 365 days a year. If you have them 50% of the time, you shouldn't be paying support more than 50% of what you would normally pay in support, unless you're dealing with a child that needs someone to monitor the child, or the child has to go to daycare, or the child has special needs, where you're going to have to pay additional funds. In the summertime, the same situation would occur with camp or other expenses for your child. Consequently, there may be additional expenses that are paid, and your site can't answer all of those questions, can they?
If anything, what we'll do is they would red flag all those information, red flag all of those topics. We might explain them, but we might not be able to answer all of them just because, again, it's not our case. We don't know everything.
Okay, tell our listeners how they can get a hold of your services.
So you can contact us through the website. And so again, that's michiganlegalhelp.org. You can, and through there, you can actually, there's a contact feature. So it can be like contact us, or it could be like the need help aspect of things. So you can click on certain buttons and you'll either get our email address or you'll start chatting live with someone.
Now, I know that your services are bilingual,
Mhm.
but not everybody can speak Spanish in your office, correct?
Right.
So there are only a few people who are bilingual that can talk to people in Spanish, correct?
Right.
And chat with them in Spanish,
Right.
but that's available during the day.
Right. So as long as I'm in the office, you'll have somebody that's able to speak Spanish to you. And also, if we're outside of those hours, or if I'm not available, then the person will be asked to just send an email, and then I or another Spanish speaker will respond to that email.
Now, do you give immigration advice?
We have immigration information. So again, we don't offer advice, but we have information. The stuff that we have right now is just on immigration basics. So things like citizenship and naturalization, different statuses, detention, deportation.
It does cover deportation.
Right, it does.
Does it warn an individual if they're convicted of a crime they can be deported?
Right, and so it goes in, and it also goes into the bars of reentry. So the information that we have right now, as regarding our immigration side of things, it is focused only on the basics. We are looking to expand that a little bit more to like protective visas, so things like VAWA applications, T visas, U visas. So those are specific forms of immigration relief that are available to victims of crimes.
So all this information can be found on your site.
Right,
It's free. The forms are free.
right.
It's accessible. Now, if I do not speak English
Mhm.
and I get the forms in Spanish, do I have to have those forms translated for the court?
So whenever we have, for the Spanish tools that are available, they will produce the forms in both English and Spanish with specific instructions to the user saying that they are to only file the English forms. There are instances where we have to have open text where people actually have to write a description. We don't have any sort of like translating software. So in those instances, what we tell users is that they can go ahead and try their best to write in English, and once they get to court, an interpreter will be provided for them, and the interpreter will help explain. Or they can wait until somebody's able to help them answer those questions. And again, they can save their answers, stop there, save their answers, and come back later when they have that person.
Now, that's an interesting point that you just brought up. Before we conclude, I want to ask you, if I go to court and I don't speak English, am I entitled to have an interpreter to assist me at court?
Yes, and so we also have information on that, and we also have a tool to help you fill out the form so you can request an interpreter.
And requesting an interpreter is not just for Spanish, it's for any language.
Any language. Right.
And the reason you're entitled to have that is to have equal access to justice.
Again, yep.
Once again, I want to thank you for coming.
Thank you
And I
for having
really,
me.
really appreciate you coming because this has just opened everybody's eyes to the programs that are available through Michigan Legal Help.
Right.
So now we can all, in comfort, go to the website, or we can get on our phone and look it up and get free legal information in every vital area that's going to help us in our day-to-day living. Thanks again for coming.
Thank you for having me.
Okay. We'll see you next week on Law Power Hour.
Are you in legal trouble? Are you in need of legal advice? Or just have general legal questions? Call 1-800-529-8721. That's 1-800-LAW-USA1. And watch Law Power Hour and get your questions answered by experienced attorneys who are experts in their field. That's Law Power Hour, hosted by Barry Keller, attorney at law. Saturdays at 10 a.m. here on WHPR Detroit Live.